Welcome to the Idaho Business Podcast, the only Idaho podcast focused on providing profits for Idaho people. If you love our state and love small business, you are in the right place. We interview local legends, learn business, and have way too much fun doing it. You're listening to the Idaho Business Podcast with your friend, host, and all-around great guy and owner of New Clean Commercial Cleaning, Spencer Ward.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Idaho Business Podcast. We're here with my friend, coach, counselor, whatever you call him, a guru. This guy has helped me a ton, Jared Barton. Jared, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. This guy has had a long career in dietetics, in coaching, health optimization, and just all around, just helping people become their better selves. And he's had a lot of success with it. He's coached people from pro athletes to young athletes to children, help people with in conjunction with Dr. Willie with hormone therapy, food allergies, whatever you can imagine. He's been there and he's helped and coached people along the way. So that's Jared Barton. So welcome again. So
yeah, glad to be here, dude.
Cool. Before we begin, we are sponsored by New Clean Commercial Cleaning. If you guys give them a call at 208-254-7070, they will give you a free sterilization spray for your office. No questions asked. Help you keep your employees working and grinding and not taking those 6 days that you dread from them. So give them a call at 208-254-7070, and they can make that happen for you. Just tell them that you heard about them on the podcast. All right, Jared, this is our second episode with you. People are listening that are, business leaders, business owners, many that are probably in shape, many that are probably out of shape and thinking, man, I wish I could get back to where I was, but it's so hard with how busy I am. Maybe I've tried all the different diets, the ketos, the paleo, the vegetarian, the vegan. There's so many different things, the fads out there nowadays that you're just saying, hey, yeah, this will help you, and this fits everyone. What do you think about all this stuff?
I think from a business perspective, speaking to business owners mainly, part of productivity is healthy employees. And that doesn't just mean weight control. That means mental health, physical health, eating food that promotes prolonged energy throughout the day, not energy drinks to give you a quick burst, then die later and go through that cycle over and over again throughout the day. And what I see in people that are trying to change this to become a more productive human being all around, not just at work, but at home with their families, for themselves, physical goals, and maybe they've gotten out of shape to the point where they can't meet those goals. They're not enjoying life the way they should. So the first thing they do is turn to the diet and exercise industry. Some people turn to the government standard diet. Some people turn to a dietitian, or, there's lots of different resources people can go to out there. One of the most common things I've seen, as you touched on, Spencer, is everyone has a diet. And there's the occasional person out there that has it different than that. But most of the time they have a diet that they subscribe to, like the government standard diet is a perfect example of that. Honestly, that thing it was industry push to start with. It's damaged our health for decades. Things like intermittent fast, fantastic approach, good science behind that. Back in the 80s, it was called delayed eating techniques. It's not really a new idea. And why do diets like that wax and wane? Why don't they just be consistent throughout the whole process? It's because they're usually applied in a way that, there's solid science. This is what the science says. It must fit everyone. And that's how they sell it. And there's no such diet that fits all of us. Generally, you could look at different diets like intermittent fast, ketogenic diets, carb shift, tree hugger diet, medical diet, however you want to look at it. All of these diets are like different medicines. You apply them for different purposes to different people. Give the wrong medicine to a person, and the medicine either doesn't work or it completely backfires. same way with dietary approaches.
I like that. What do you say? And this is interesting to me because someone just turned me onto a book, How Not to Die. And there's also a documentary on Netflix about, vegetarianism and just a plant-based diet and all the benefits behind it and the health risks and kind of they put a lot of negative behind the meat sources and all that kind of stuff. What do you say about that type of those type of diets?
Doing food studies on the effect of certain types of diets or specific foods on the population in general has been done before in such massive scale that, you can't help but be impressed. Nationwide studies were what developed the original standards behind our government standard diet. Originally, Dietary Guidelines for Americans, then Food Guide Pyramid, now iPlate.gov, same diet, better software. There was some fantastic studies behind that, all sorts of perfect science, supposedly. When you try to eliminate all the variables in someone's diet, like you say meat, for example, trying to take a whole population and figure out whether or not meat was the only variable in their diet that caused their disease state is almost impossible. It's so difficult. And a perfect example is go back to the original studies behind our government standard diet. Most people at this point have figured out that it was garbage to begin with. Not that there isn't good things about it. Sure. Obviously, the government standards do have good things. There is science behind it. But then you add money and influence behind it, and you get, let's have 6 to 11 grains a day. Pretty much everybody knows at this point that was never a good idea.
Sure.
Whenever they supported it, right? But that was science backed. There was huge studies around this, supposedly. So when I get these things where they want to remove an entire food source from a large population, that's the push for that type of a diet. Remove red meat completely. My question would be, what were they eating with that red meat? Mm-hmm. And what's the other stand? What's their past history? What's their genetics? Does this really fit everyone? Does red meat cause cancer in every person? Obviously, no, or some of the Inuit populations in our world would be dying at 30 years old constantly from heart disease. Sure. Or cancer, and they have some of the lowest incidences ever of that. So we have to look at other variables when it comes to removal of something from the diet or removing a food source. Is red meat harder to digest? Absolutely. And in some people who have a compromised digestive tract, it could be a problem. Others, they could be constantly combining high-fat red meats with fries and a Coke. That red meat coupled with asparagus and broccoli would have had a very different effect on your arteries than what it has after you spike your blood sugar. And I could go on with tons of examples. We don't have time for it here, but tons of examples of why we really have to be discerning when it comes to reading information that seems to be biased like that on one side. And is really supported by the vegetarian push. Others are supporting the carnivore push. Mm-hmm. I raise an eyebrow every time you have an extreme removal of a major nutrient source in the diet.
Very interesting. Yeah, just keep a good moderate approach at what you're doing with your health. I like it. So
yeah, and study things based on your history. That's one of the things that I do after 15 years doing this, and being a former fat guy and binge eater myself. Me and you, Spencer, we share some history in that. You've gone through that as I've worked with you. I went through that in the picture in the past, and having that much experience with this and working with different people, part of my job is to sit down and evaluate their whole situation. Mm-hmm. Have you been through trauma? What's your stress levels like? What might be affecting your response to food, your response to exercise? If your stress level's so high you can barely handle it now, well, you're not going to be able to do CrossFit and come out of it okay. It's because you don't have the capacity for the extra. So evaluating all these little things about a person and then figuring out, okay, what kind of dietary approach should this person have? Some people really shouldn't eat red meat.
Sure.
Others, They shouldn't eat very many carbohydrates. Doesn't mean carbohydrates are bad or that everybody should be on a low carb diet. It means a high carb diet is not appropriate for that individual based on their history. And if people work as they change lifestyle, if they work on being really good self-analyzers, there's a lot of the stuff that they can figure out on their own over time instead of just paying attention to the biggest fad out there at the time.
I like that. Let's segue a little bit to, you just said your lifestyle, changing your lifestyle a little bit here. And, you and I have been working together. You and I have known each other for years now, but you've helped me get into shape once before, but now, and I lost it and I'm getting back to it. But I think the big difference from before to now is before it was just like, okay, I'm going to eat all this, exactly how you tell me to do it. And
Right.
when I'm done, I'm just going to go back to how I do things and I'll still be semi-healthy, but it didn't work. Once I was done and I accomplished the goals that I wanted to go do, and I did those Spartan challenges, stress took over, things happened, and I just let things slip because I didn't make it a lifestyle change. This time around, I realized, I've got, number one, I've got 3 more kids and they want to play with me and they want to have fun with me. And I'm like, man, I want to be around for them longer. And it's not that type of scenario anymore. It's like, I don't want to just get fit quick. I want to have that lifestyle change. And hey, yeah, a burger does sound good, but that's not going to really fit my lifestyle, long term if I'm eating that every lunch for eternity. So that's been huge, starting with my blood tests and going through that with you and Warren, Dr. Willie, that and then just having those sit downs with you guys and have those accountability sessions and obviously just working out and having those that ability to and mindset, knowing that this is not a 6-month thing or an 8-month thing or a 12-week thing. This is a year to 2-year thing to get me where I need to be, and then this is where I'm going to stay.
Yeah, and you truly never get to stop. That's the thing, that the mentality that you've had it in the past, and I've had it too. Way back when, this is many years ago for me. But the dietary experience I have, I have experience in a clinical setting with HCG diet, New Direction, which is similar to Optavia or Ideal Protein or any of those supplement-based, basically crash diets, the unrealistic approaches, and the bodybuilder programs. Not that they're, nothing against bodybuilders. They have their process too as a competitor, but, bodybuilders type programs where it's like, I'm going to lose weight as fast as I can. I'm going to get this weight off. I just got to get it off. And I don't blame people for being impatient, but you can't change what took you 20 years to create in 6 months.
Exactly.
I've seen people lose 100 pounds in 6 months. They would seemingly have changed it. But the instances of failure on that, it's something like 96% when you get past the 2-year point. So when you get past the 2-year point, it's really, really high fail rates on that all or nothing perspective. You've experienced it extensively.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And the idea that you're going to have to give up having a Five Guys burger for the rest of your life, that's horrible too. That's, people tend to feel like they've failed when they bring in things that they absolutely love. And realistically, they're not going to be able to remove these things for the rest of their lives. But you're right, you can't have it every day and think you're going to get away with it. So the thought process I'm working with now, or what I try to create in people, is number one, stop thinking of foods in terms of specific foods. Learn how to categorize them based on their effect on your body. What does a carb do? What does a protein do? What do fibrous vegetables do? What do fats do in your body? How should these things be combined? Instead of just counting calories, you actually learn a little bit about how food works in your body. What does it do to hormones? Because what really dictates weight gain or weight loss and energy control is not calories, it's hormones.
Mm-hmm.
Food has a direct effect on hormones, specifically insulin. That'd be the big guy in terms of energy control. So there's more to it than calories in, calories out, and there's a lot more to it than rigidity. So over the years, I've kind of come to a point where when writing meal plans for people and discussing things, I don't make them count macros. I don't make them count calories. Measuring food is necessary off the start, but what we try to do is build visual references and get away from measuring food as quickly as we can, different for every person. And there's no one approach for everyone. So some people, they're numbers nerds. They are wired that way. They understand the whole world through numbers, and they need to count macros. And I can work with that too. But that's kind of the very minor part of our population. Most of us need an approach that's long-term. So what I'm doing currently is just applying rules. Meal plans, diet programs, their main purpose is to apply rules. And you can't take them too seriously because you're not going to be using them 20 years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
It'll drive you nuts if you try. So meal plans just give you a leg up on getting started, but there's rules that are behind any program. And this is how I put it. 5 rules. The first 2 are implied based on the structure it takes to pay attention to your diet. Number 1 is don't let yourself get too thirsty. Number 2 is don't let yourself get too hungry. Pretty simple. Just don't rely on willpower. It's overrated. Take care of your body's needs. Emotional needs play into that too. Third rule, every time you eat, think of a protein source first if you can. At the very least, have a protein source with the meal, whether that's plant-based or meat-based or whatever you want to do. Preferably not supplemental. There are some advantages and disadvantages to that, but protein helps to slow down digestion, suppress appetite, slow down rises in blood sugar, and supply building blocks for the muscles. So that's rule number 3, very, very important. It's also one of the hardest things for people to follow. Our society is very carb-oriented. They're easy to make, they're palatable, they're cheap, they don't require reheating half the time. So protein sources are more difficult. You've got to kind of figure out.
Oh, your audio's starting to cut a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, let me check.
There you go. We're good now.
Back?
Yep.
Okay, so, stop at the grocery store done, picking up a rotisserie chicken. Or when you do cook meat, cook enough for 5 days. That's generally how we do it. So that in my household, so that you're able to kind of grab and go with the foods that require the most time to prep, and you make your protein sources available. So this requires some forethought. But it doesn't require you to prep all of your food and put it in separate Tupperwares in the fridge for the next 10 years, because nobody's going to do that.
Yeah.
The 4th rule is if you're eating a food that affects your blood sugar quickly. So this is anything made from a grain, starchy root vegetables, potatoes, sweet potatoes, yams, winter squashes, to a degree, beans and legumes, although they're not as fast acting on your blood sugar. Your fruits, anything that elevates blood sugar quickly, you would consider that a readily accessible, easy fuel source. These fuel sources are least advantageous at the tail end of the day, the dinner meal. We go to bed with all this easy fuel available. We just elevated insulin. We're in fat storage mode, and we have no use for the fuel we just put in ourselves. That exact state would have been an advantage in the first part of your day. You just supplied fuel for functioning. That's great. Right. But we tend to have potatoes, pasta, bread, rice, tortillas, things that elevate blood sugar quickly, and that's the primary components of our dinner meals. So a couple things that are happening, we're running our pancreas to death, literally. Mm-hmm. And in terms of your energy balance in the long term, your sleep quality, and your ability to use quick energy sources, you're hammering them. So one of the things to not having what we call active carbs, quick energy sources at bed or at dinner time, is so you sleep better, you get better brain health, better cognitive function, you don't store fat while you're sleeping, better energy metabolism, and you avoid developing some of the most common disease states in our population, insulin resistance and diabetes, simply by giving your pancreas a longer break every day. All foods elevate insulin, but when you take in proteins, fibers, and fats, they elevate it very, very slowly, where a banana elevates it very quickly. So that's rule number 4. Rule number 5 is practice food awareness. Means know what you ate the last 2 days and have a reasonable idea what you're going to eat the next 2. Can't tell you how many times I sit down with people and I'll do a 24-hour history, just kind of spring it on them and see how well they remember their food intake so that I can get familiar with what they eat. So many people have a really hard time recalling what they ate yesterday. And even more so the day before. So there's no awareness. And of course, they don't know what they're eating the next 2 days. They're in a hurry. Mm-hmm. These people are professionals. They're moving all the time. So being able to eat on the go is I'll grab what I can when I can. And they skip lunch half the time. And by the time they reach the end of the day, they're not only stressed out from the work day, but they're starving to death internally. And they don't even know it because they've overridden it with busyness. And we wonder why we binge at night. Right?
Right. It's exactly
so,
right.
Sometimes that means you went to the grocery store deli, picked up rotisserie chicken, some fruit, vegetables, baby real cheese, and olives, and combined that in a healthy way. I mean, that's still food awareness. You can get, I've filmed this before. I got 3 days worth of well-balanced lunch in 22 and a half minutes in just the deli section of Fred Meyer.
Nice.
That's still food awareness, even when you didn't prep it. It's a lot better than trying to grab something healthy at Wendy's when you're starving to death and somebody just cut you off in traffic. And now you're going to eat a salad, right? Instead of a burger. So the 5 rules apply, even if you're going to eat cake for dinner tonight, right? Not a good idea to do that, but it's going to happen. I mean, we're going to have times throughout the next 20 years, we tend to look at it as I'm either on a diet or I'm not. And if I have that cake at night, I've failed.
Yeah.
Feelings of failure lead to the next binge.
Yep. I might as well binge.
Yeah. And me and you both are familiar with that. You even more than me. It's a tough, really tough thing to defeat. And most people would look at that as if they get kind of giving themselves over to, I'm having a pizza and piece of cake tonight, or pizza and beer tonight, or whatever the thing is, and they've reserved themselves to that. The diet mentality would say, I better cut my calories today to make up for what I'm about to eat tonight. So they come into it starving already, and we wonder why we eat 3 times the junk we should, and then we're eating Swedish fish at the end, or whatever the case is.
Or if they go to the gym, they're like, well, I better do 3 hours of cardio today.
Yeah, trying to burn it off. Exactly right. Which, that's a fallacy too. Calorie burn doesn't equal fat burn. Can't outrun that. But my thought process on it would be, use the rules. If you know you're going to do that night, instead of starving yourself to make up for the calories, which don't matter as much as we've been taught, feed yourself even better. Pay more attention to your hydration. Try to keep your stress levels down. Take a break after lunch. Do some stretching. Eat more protein at every meal. Make sure your body's needs are taken care of throughout the day. So you basically follow all of the rules, and then at night, break that one. And don't feel bad.
Yeah.
Who cares? You broke the rule. In your mind, you're not off the wagon, right? You had a little hiccup. You're not off the wagon because you no longer have this I'm on a diet or I'm not perspective. You're just following rules. And those rules apply whether your diet sucks and you're on vacation or not. Just follow as many as you can. And then the lack of feelings of failure and defeat are it's amazing what that does to your self-control in the big picture. You have some failures here and there. I don't encourage fast weight loss anyway. You can lose a percent body fat per month and take 2 years to lose your weight. Your chances of maintaining are tons better. And it allows you room to not be so specific that you feel like you're on a bodybuilder diet, counting macros and measuring everything and following your meal plans perfectly with no deviation. And oh my gosh, it's no wonder people burn out and regain their weight.
That's right. And your skin has time to adjust as you lose it slowly.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I'm teaching things now, is more of a lifestyle perspective, where I do write meal plans for people, but more and more as I've done this, I kind of get to where I discourage meal plans, because, it's after a month or two following meal plans, you should be able to develop your own. But most of the time programs are built so that they want you to come back and pay for more meal plans.
Sure.
I want you to be educated to a point where you don't need them. That's the difference between a black and white on a diet or off the diet perspective and actual lifestyle eating.
I like that a lot. Yeah, I like that. That's huge to understand that. You got to just break that cycle in your head, because how many times do you hear that you're at a birthday party or you're somewhere else and I can't do it. I'm on a diet, and I hate that word now. I hate that D word, so.
Right. Lifestyle change is better. And when I think of being on a diet, I do believe our whole population, we should be on a diet, but not in the way that people think. Yeah. Being on a diet to me is just knowing your food, paying attention to it, following a few rules, instead of being meticulous and looking at the diet word as totally a weight loss and restrictive thing. We've been duped by the food industry, in some parts of the exercise industry, not the whole industry, but the food industry, the government standard diet, the restaurant industry, into thinking that we don't have to think about our food. They've got our backs. Just come get what they've prepared for you. It should be easier for you to feed yourself. You're a busy professional. Don't worry about it. We got you. It's never in the history of mankind been easy to feed ourselves.
No.
Not if you want to do it right. It's not now either. We got to pay more attention to our food intake. And just like if you own a business or you're a fantastic employee, a manager, you have to take the reins.
That's right.
In your professional life. If people looked at their exercise and their diet exactly like that, I got to take the reins. I got to learn how to do this well enough to teach other people. I got to be the leader. That's so empowering. It helps you in so many areas of your professional life to have control over your body's health, your physical activity levels, your strength. It's amazing what it does for you mentally.
No, I totally agree. Well, man, I think our listeners are going to have a great listen on this one because there was a lot to digest on this one.
Yeah, sorry, I talked a little fast.
No, this is great. The 5 rules was amazing to hear that, and yeah, there's just a way to do it. You know, you professionals out there that you've got some weight gain and you're trying to get it off, and you're just like, man, but I'm constantly traveling. I'm flying here, I'm flying there. You know, there's still ways you can do it. You can find healthier options while you're traveling. You know, so
yeah,
5
absolutely.
rules are huge. So
yep, and this is what I teach people to do. So after 15 years teaching people, obviously I've changed directions quite a few times and gotten to the point where I'm at now where I don't use any crash diets. I don't use meal replacements. I'll use protein shakes here and there, but I don't use meal replacements. I don't use gimmicks. I just teach real food, real eating. And that's what people need to learn no matter what program they're going to. You go to a program and they're completely product based. The first question I would encourage anyone to ask themselves is, can I do this for the next 20 years? Do I want to eat these bars for my morning snack for the next 20 years? Do I want to drink these shakes for lunch for the next 20 years? If your answer is no, but I can do it for 6 months till I lose my weight, you're on the wrong diet.
Yep.
Not going to be a long-term perspective. It's kind of it takes on a short-term perspective in your brain right from the get-go.
Yep, I like it. And those that are listening, you know, this guy has helped me, you know, to make that change in my life. I'm down like 65 pounds right now. I'm still going to go down another probably 35, you know, because I got up there higher than I wanted to. But man, yeah, and I've enjoyed the past year of doing this because it's been a journey. I don't feel like I've gone without. I've still enjoyed some of the foods that I enjoy, you know, but it's in moderation. And yeah, I feel like I'm on that steady journey of, hey, this is my life now. You
have to reflect on your history too, because you know I've watched you do this. We've been working with each other since 2008. That's how long we've been together. And I've watched you do this through crash diet programs. I told you Optavia was going to backfire. You remember that? Yeah. But I've watched you do this, and I've watched how it correlates with your family life and with your business life. And what failing on a diet and rebounding your weight, rebounding in weight does to you professionally as a business owner is horrid.
It is.
And it's hard to acknowledge that kind of stuff, but being a yo-yo dieter hammers you emotionally. And having the mental energy to run a business, be a CEO or be a manager, be in control of other people, or just be a productive employee, when you're constantly on this yo-yo and you go between feelings of euphoria of, oh, I'm succeeding, to being completely crushed 6 months later. I've seen you go through those cycles. It doesn't just affect your body. It affects your family life. It affects,
sure does.
And we talked about that before. It affects your professional life. It affects how your employees see you. And it is really, and your confidence when you're working with, taking on a new client, for example, and you've just failed on a crash diet.
Yeah, it's true.
You know the difference between how that feels compared to as far down in weight as you are now. How much more confident are you as a business owner and a professional going to a new client and taking on new business now compared to when you crashed after Optavia.
Yeah, so much more confident. So much more.
Yeah, I think it has a more direct effect on our professional lives than what we think, unless you just sit back and analyze it, actually look at it.
Oh, and if anyone says otherwise, they're wrong. They're fooling themselves. So it makes you a better professional, makes you a better husband, makes you a better father. So
yeah, once you get off the yo-yo, once you start realizing, oh my gosh, I'm doing it right, I can actually do this for the rest of my life, and that it clicks. I've finally found an approach that's real.
yeah,
It's going to take me forever. That's the frustrating part.
Yep.
The thought process of I didn't put this on overnight, I'd taken it off overnight. Really wrapping your brain around that sucks.
Yep.
But you have to.
That's very true. That's very true. Well, Jared, people listening are thinking, oh, Jared obviously knows the stuff. I'd like to go see him. Obviously, if people are saying this kind of stuff, thinking this kind of stuff in their mind, what's the best way to get a hold of you, and where do they do that?
Call me you can get a hold of me through Physicians Immediate Care, which is technically where I work, but I'm in a satellite office. I share office space with the protein shop right next to Cold Stone Creamery in Pocatello. 475 Yellowstone Suite B. My number is 208-254-7281. That's usually the most practical way to schedule. I do my own scheduling. I kind of prefer to hold on to the reins with that. So sometimes I do play a little phone tag because I miss calls. Just leave a message. I get back to you very quickly, as quickly as I can. So that number is great for scheduling. And then J Barton at MV, stands for Mountain View Hospital.net, is my email address. Okay.
Awesome. Well, Jared, again, thank you for coming on the show, man. We've all learned a ton. And those that are thinking, I've got to do something different, this is the different that you're looking for. I promise you that. So give him a call, make your appointment, and make your life start to change now. So again, as always, stay out there, stay positive, stay grateful, and look for opportunities to serve one another. So thanks, Jared, again, and we'll see
Thanks
everyone.
for having me.
Yep, we'll see you.
Congratulations on spending a couple of minutes getting a little bit smarter, having some fun, and supporting the Idaho business community. If you're feeling the love, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you are.